I've had, when I was younger, I used to think I wanted to be an author before I realized, so it was an interesting journey for me, basically. When I was younger, I sort of had this, desire to make stories, and I really enjoyed watching films, and they really touched me, and it was almost to the point where I was so impressionable that whenever I watched a film, I would come out of it feeling like I wanted to do something different. It's like that meme of, you know, the fucking American Psycho guy, and it's like me leaving the film I just watched, having rebuilt my entire personality around the main character. Like, I was like that for a while. But essentially, I was really inspired by that, and I wanted to do something to do with that, but I didn't really know how to get that started. And so what it began with was me writing books, and there were quite a few. I'll tell you the plot of a couple of them. So there was one. So the first one that I started doing seriously was fantasy, and it was, reading it back, it was really bad. Really bad. I read it back recently and I was like, oh my god. But you could tell that I was having fun and I was being really creative and I was just expressing myself, so whatever. Would have been... also, I should mention, it was by this point that I had made an epiphany. I'd made an epiphany at this point, and I was busy in Microsoft Word, you know, trying to make these into like novels, and then I sort of sat back and I realized something. I had an epiphany, and it was essentially just, wait a minute, I'm making these into books even though I like films. Why am I doing that? And I was like, well, because one day I want someone to adapt my books into a film. And then I sat and I thought about it. I was like, why don't I just make the movie? And I was like, oh. And then it began, and that was how I sort of became really interested in film. And so it was by this point that I was sort of thinking of it more in terms of like a cinematic experience. But yeah, and then I imagined the whole experience of watching that film would be that it feels like I would want her to feel like a very rootable for character, someone who definitely has problems, but who is really funny and lovable, and who seems like they're always trying to do something that's for their friends or something that's fun and exciting, and it's what we the audience want to see. And it would be very flashy and full of bright music and cool action, to the point where when we reach the end and we see the consequences of all of those actions, that it dawns upon the audience that they've sort of been willingly going on with the villain's side of things. And I think that would be pretty cool, you know. Definitely sort of like a not a very well fleshed out idea. It's the kind of thing that I just marinate on a lot while I'm listening to music. But if I ever had the opportunity of like writing a full screenplay, and with what I've learned now about actual structure and making these things more digestible, I feel like maybe it could be a good story.